Hello there, today we're going to be making a clicker game, kind of like cookie clicker. You could do other similar stuff around that nature, water clicker, cookie clicker, same thing. So first thing we need to do is you need to create a new folder. So in order to do that, just go where you want to work and then create a new folder, name it whatever you want. Okay, once you're done with that, you need to open up a text editor. Any text editor works because it doesn't require anything special. But what I like to use Notepad++. You can use anything else. You can use online editor and just save it locally on your keyboard through Notepad, and vice versa. You can do whatever you want as long as the file is on your computer. Alright, so before we begin, we need to go over what necessarily HTML is. HTML is a programming language which you use to make websites. Now, it utilizes these things called tags, which are basically like books. So you have the beginning tag, which is the book cover, and then you have the ending tag, which is the book back cover. And these basically define what's inside the book. So the front cover is let's say pizza. That means the book's going to be about pizza. And that's basically what we're doing here. So first off, let's save the file. Save as, and time to index.html, and navigate to the file you had before. Here. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is you want to type in the HTML tags. This will define that the entire page is going to be a website. So therefore, yeah, so this is the front cover and this is the back cover. Another thing you need to know is that each tag starts with this and ends with this, no matter what. But here, for a closing tag, since you always have to close an opening tag, you'll have this right here. That will signify that the tag is closed. Alright, now since we have the website, we should now be able to see it. To get to your website, you just go to the file you created, and the index should be here. Double click it, and it will show it right here. And here's your website. So now, since we have the website part established, we need to define the head element. In the head element, this is going to define what is in our head. Your head is basically this part right here. So basically you can set the title, the icon, that's pretty much about it, and you can include some files down the road. So for this, we're going to set the title to Clicker Game. So we're setting the title book, the front cover, the end cover, and then the content. So now, since you have the title element for the head, your title on your page should now be updated. So in order to do that, we need to save it first and then run the page. Would you look at that? Our clicker game title is now defined. So now what we can do now is work on another element, body, if I can spell it right. Okay, in the body is basically this whole thing, basically all the white part, that's your body. So basically everything the person or the user is going to see. Now if you're wondering how you got these little spaces, I usually just press tab. Now the spacing in an HTML file is not necessary, so you can ignore it. You don't need it. For all you matter, you can do something like this. It's not necessary, but if you like it to make it readable, you can do this. No, not. Okay, so let's define a paragraph. A paragraph is basically to display a paragraph to the screen. So we need to start with the first tag, the opening tag, which is P. And then we can put whatever we want. Hello world, I don't care. You can just say this is the paragraph, and then you need to close it. Or everything after it's also going to be a paragraph, which is not what you would want. Run it, and would you look at that? You have this is a paragraph. Now, let's say we wanted to display an image to the screen, which we're going to be doing a lot in this clicker game or incremental game, whatever you want to call it. So what we need to do is we need to go into the file where our files are located, create a new folder, and let's name it images. And then in the images folder, you can copy your image, paste it in there. You can copy your image, paste it in there, and basically name it whatever you want. You need to know the name and the file type for later use. Okay, so let's create an image. So to do that, you start with the image tag, and that's it. But you can refresh, but there's no image. That's because we have to define a property or an attribute where to look for the image, and that's the src. So in the src, you can do something like this: images, which is the folder, and then example image or whatever your name is in the extension. Basically the path from this file right here to this. So basically you're starting here, then it's going here, then it's going here. So we should now see a chunky salsa image. But the thing is, that is way too big for my liking. So what we need to do is we need to set the height and the width privileges. So for height, we're going to do 256 pixels. And for the width, we're going to do the same, 256 pixels. Okay, and if you want to see what it looks like, it is now smaller. You can set this to whatever you want. Let's say if you wanted it at 64 pixels, you can. But for this, we're going to keep it at 256 for the sake of this. Okay. Now, we need to display the score to the user. So let's change the paragraph to score, and then span, which is basically just an inline thing. It's just to separate stuff so you can get it later. We'll cover over it later. 0/span/b. Span is like an inline thing. It doesn't do anything different with the element. It just displays it. So don't worry about it skewing anything. For now, we can just refresh and we have the score, which is 0. Now, how do we know what the player's score is? Well, we need to add a new tag then, which is the script. Now this is going to incorporate a new language into it, which is called JavaScript, which basically makes your website come to life. It's going to add way more features and stuff. First, we need to set a variable var score equal to 0. A variable is basically like, in algebra class, it's like x, which holds numbers. So basically, it can be whatever name you want, as long as it's one word, doesn't have any spaces. It can be any name you want, and it can be set to whatever you want. For this case, we're going to set it to 0. It can also, variables can also be names. It can also be set to true or false, is cool, or it can be set to false. Basically, these things are going to be the cornerstone. So our variable score is equal to 0. Now, let's say I wanted to add 1 to score. So you could do score equals score plus 1. Now score is equal to 1. But the thing is, we're not going to see it, so we'll do a simple function, which is score, which just alerts you, which sends up a pop-up saying score. So let's try it. As you see, it should say 1. 1 here because score is now equal to 1. We displayed the score, and it's 1. Okay, so now that the score is equal to 1, we need to maybe add some features so that we can actually add to the score. Right? Well, before we do that, we need to figure out how we can actually update this variable to show what our score is, because this would get annoying displaying in an alert what your score is. We don't want that. So what we can do is we do this. We can do document get element by ID, close that off, .enter HTML equals score. Now before we continue, we need to set the ID for span to score. So what this does is it makes it so this code can find this specific one. Because if we look for just a span element, it's gonna find, and if we have like 20 on our page, it's gonna include them all. That's not what we want. We want this exact specific element. Think of the ID or class as the ID attribute as their name. And this dude's name is score. So just put score right here. And basically what it's doing is it's going from the document, which is the whole body tag, so right here to here is basically the document, and then it's getting the element by ID, which is score, and then it's setting its inner HTML, which is everything in between the book covers, so the contents of the book, and then setting it to score. So let's see how this looks. As you can see, it updated it to score of 1. Now, let's say if I wanted to do this like that many times, and you have a score of 8. So, now since we have all that, we need to add the ability for when you click on this to do this. In order to do that, we need to make an onClick event. Okay, so now that you have an onClick event, what an onClick event does is it executes a JavaScript function from the HTML code. So what a function does, for example, let's do a function add to score amount. What this is going to do is it's going to add to the score using this amount. Now the thing is we have to write the code for it to do that. So what a function does is kind of like an order. Let's say I'm at a pizza parlor and I order a pizza, and I say I want a pepperoni pizza. So for example, that function would look like function order pizza, or let's do make me a pizza order, and then you're going to return the finished product. That's basically what a function does, is it takes the input, which is order, and it uses it in a function in a reusable way. Okay, and these things, the inputs are called arguments. You can have as many arguments as you want. You can do order, order 1, order 2, order 3002 billion. You get the idea. Okay, so in the add to score event, we're going to do this. Score equals score plus amount. So this will add the score. It's going to say, basically what it's saying is score equals the score plus amount. If you just said score equals amount, then it's just going to set it to the amount and not add it to the score. And now before we leave this, we're going to copy this, and then we're going to do this. So every time you add to the score, it's going to update it. So we can do something like that. Now, to show you how it works, we could do something like this. Add to score 100, 1000, you know, changes numbers, yeah. Okay, then you can go back, and you can see, updated the score. Okay, so let's add the function to add to the score to here. So add click on click, you want to add to score 1. 1 is the input, which is basically what amount is being set to. Amount is being set to 1 using this, and then before we had the amounts being like 1000, 1200. Okay, so let's refresh and try it. As you can see, we have this. Now let's say I accidentally misspelled it. You see it's not working. What you can do is you can right click the inspect button, go to console, and it'll tell you the error. And it says, oh look, this is not defined. At HTML image element on click, which is at index, which tells you the line. It's on the on click. Oh look, I misspelled that. And then you can refresh, and then it won't be there anymore. Okay, so now since we have it so you can actually add to the score, we need to make it so you can actually buy buildings. So let's create a cool button. So we're basically going to make a button. So we're starting with the beginning tag, and let's say cursor. Let's buy cursor, and then we'll do cursor. You can put by cursor if you want. Okay, and then we're going to do a span element. ID, oh wait, ID equals cursor cost 15, and then span, and then span ID equals cursors 0/span/button. Okay, so this is our new cool button. So look at it, and look at that. That's your new button. Now this button's not going to do anything until we actually code it to be able to do stuff. In order to do that, we need to go into here, and we need to create some variables. Var cursor cost equals 15, and var cursors equals 0. Now, let's add a onClick event to this, which is going to be by cursor, which is every time you're going to click it, it's going to execute this function by cursor, which will buy the cursor for you. And at the current moment, it's not going to do anything. Let's make sure we don't have any errors. And no, we're good. Okay, so let's go back. Now, in order to buy a cursor, your score has to be greater than or equal to 15, right? So let's do that. So if the score is greater than or equal to the cost of the cursor, then do this. So basically what this is doing is you have this, which is basically this in math, and then you have this, which is basically this in math, the less than or equal, greater than and equal, and then when you do equal, you have to have two equal signs in an if statement, which is equals equal. It's a little weird, but yes, you kind of have to do it. Okay, now you see these little squiggly brackets? This is basically saying from the start to this and to the end of this, that everything in that is part of this. So for example, this here to here, so here to here is basically everything in the by cursor function. Same thing with this. This is all in the add to score function. And then right here to here is only executed if this is true. So this is part of the if statement. In order to do that, we can do score equals score minus cursor cost. So right there, we are going to subtract from the score because we just bought it. So let's do this, and then, well, now since we have sold one, taken away from the score, we need to give the cursor to the player, which can be done this, cursors equals cursors plus 1. This will add 1 to the cursor count of the user, and then if you want to, you don't have to include this, but you can do something like this, cursor cost equals math.round cursor cost times 1.15. Okay. Now this math.round is another function. So kind of like this is a function right here. This is a function. What it does is just rounds whatever in here after it's done. So it's very useful so you don't have crazy decimal numbers since you are multiplying by decimal. Okay. And then all you have to do now is you can copy this section, put it right here, and this will update the score. Copy it 3 more times, and then change that one to cursor cost, change this one to cursors, change this one to cursor cost, and this one to cursors. This will basically make it so you buy it, subtracts from your score, gives you a cursor, and it increases the cost of the cursor. So let's see how this looks. So let's click it a few times, and then click cursor. It looks like we do have an error. Let's see what the problem is. Cannot set property of 8 enter HTML of null on line 25, which means this basically means that something is not set. Cursor cost. Line 25. Element document.element.getById cursor cost.innerHTML equals cursor cost. So it's saying there's a problem here, and let's see if we can figure it. Cursor, did we spell it wrong? Oh, I see what's wrong. Well, let's see if that's the issue. Nope, that does not seem to be the issue. Oh, this is it. So we put a slash at the beginning to span. This is why. You gotta check the span's correct. So we made the opening tag and closing tag, which kind of messes things up. So hope we fix that, and let's see if it fixed now. Looks like that. And it upgraded the cost and all that. Okay, so now since we have it, so you can actually buy cursors, let's make a function to make it so you can get income from your cursors. Now there's this thing called set interval, which basically does something every X amount of seconds. And for this case, we want to do it every 1 second or 1000 milliseconds, since it takes milliseconds as the input. So the first argument is going to be function. And then you're going to take a squiggly line, end the squiggly line, and comma, 1000. And then you can put a comment 1000 ms equals 1 second. Okay, so this code right here will be executed every 1 second. So everything between the squiggly lines will be executed every second. So score equals score plus cursors. You can put times 1 or the cursor income, which say you wanted it at 5. But for this case, we're going to do 1, but that's redundant, so we're just going to do that. And once you're done with that, we need to actually update the scores on the player page, which will do that. And then let's try it out. As you can see, we are getting coins every second. We're getting 3 every second because we have 3 cursors. Now, before we finish this tutorial, we're going to add one more button so you can duplicate this line and then just change everything by grandma. Okay, and then you can change this to 100 or whatever you want your base price to be. And then we can do some other stuff. Our grandma cost equals 100, and then var grandmas equals 0. And then you can copy the function by cursor and just change it to by grandma, and then you can just change all the variables. Okay, and then you can go into your set interval, score equals score plus grandma times 5, because we're going to make grandmas get 5 per second. Okay, so you have score equals score minus the grandma cost, grandmas equals grandmas plus 1, grandma, then you update the grandma's cost, and then you update all these variables and make sure they're defined. Okay, and let's try it. So let's run it. So we have, and look, we're getting coins per second, and then we have these, we're getting different ones per second. I'm using an auto clicker, that's why my numbers are going really high. Okay, we do have one problem. As you can see, it's not updating on line 40. Grandma cost equals, and we capitalized that, so that's why that's kind of messed up. Let's try this again. Okay, and then as you can see, we are now getting grandmas, and we're getting coins per second. Now, before we finish this, I want to change one thing in the onClick event of the image. Let's change this to cursor clicking power. And then here you can define it, clicking power equal to 1. Basically, this is going to input this variable into it, which is 1. So basically, you're just inputting 1 or whatever this is set to the add score. And this kind of makes it easier, so you don't have to like find where you put that. You can just go here. Oh, I want it to be 2. There you go. Now, if you're making this, you don't have to follow everything I did, so you don't have to have cursors or grandmas. You can name these whatever you want. Just be aware that you need to change the names if you are going to do that. And note that you can't copy exactly what I did if you do change some of the stuff, which is totally fine, and you learn better that way. So, this would be what the total code looks like. It's everything you need, and yeah. So that's everything. Thank you for watching, and next tutorial we will probably update the layout of the website to make it look better, so that way it doesn't look like this hideous thing right here. It would look way better. Thank you for watching, and see ya.